Digital tools are playing a bigger role than ever in how small businesses grow, especially here in New Jersey. But as technology evolves, so do the policies and the challenges surrounding it. Brendan Thomas is the executive director of Internet for Growth, an organization focused on supporting small businesses and advocating for responsible digital policies. Good morning to you, Brendan.
Good morning, Ken. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Good to have you on, and just elaborate a little bit more on the mission of Internet for Growth. Are you there to help private business use internet wisely? What's the exact purpose?
You have it exactly right. We are a nationwide coalition of thousands of small business and creators helping the public and policymakers to understand the importance of technology to Main Street today. Every business in an online economy is a technology business. And so we want to ensure that policymakers create better data privacy and other policy to support innovation, jobs, and growth across the country, and especially in New Jersey, where we recently launched. We produced a poll showing that digital tools are an affordability issue, which is a major issue on the campaign trail today. And so we want to help New Jersey policymakers especially understand that a better policy can support their constituents. It's not just a big tech issue, it's a small business issue.
So, who's involved in the organization, and what led to the creation of Internet for Growth?
Well, I'm reporting to you today from Washington, D.C. We are an advocacy organization that focuses on Congress and state legislatures. We have, over the last few years, assembled a nationwide coalition, as I said, to broadcast the perspective of small businesses and creators who depend on digital advertising, marketing, and media. But it's an entire ecosystem of tools that local economies and consumers in New Jersey and across the country rely on to save money, to receive personalized content and opportunities. We're really concerned about a larger issue that goes under the radar, but probably isn't appreciated enough in today's economy, which is the information that travels over a free and open internet. And as politicians or policymakers and the public become more concerned about data privacy, we want to make sure that they strike the right balance so that essential information that the economy needs to run doesn't disappear. And when it comes to issues of the definitions of data or platform policy or how businesses may access information to serve their customers online, we want to make sure that legislation or regulation doesn't go too far and actually choke off the information that people need to connect and communicate.
Why would you say digital advertising is such a critical tool for small businesses right now, and specifically here in New Jersey?
Think about all the amazing free tools that a business has today that they never had 20 years ago or even 5 years ago. There's a plethora of platforms, from streaming content to advertising and marketing, retail media. If you're a consumer brand today, chances are you have an advertising function where you can connect consumers to products online. And so what we're really advocating for is the ability of consumers to take advantage of free and low cost media that advertising supports. Advertising has always supported free and low cost media. Today, it's even more prevalent than it ever was. And I think you would be surprised if restrictions on personalized advertising or customer data were to take effect, the effect on prices for consumers in an economy where people are concerned about prices. The ad-supported internet is largely free, including many products and services that you might never think of, everything from maps and navigation to search and social media, where small businesses can make themselves known and connect with new customers. And then, of course, if you really want to engage in advertising, you can do it at a low cost. You can target the right audience, and it's a benefit to consumers too, who have can avail themselves of more choice and convenience online.
And do we have a sense of the numbers of businesses or individuals in New Jersey that rely on digital advertising today?
Every business relies on digital advertising today. As I mentioned, whether if you're online, you rely on digital advertising because advertising powers the internet. if you're a business today and you're not on social media, any number of platforms, take your pick because there's a lot, you're using advertising. And if you want to level up, you have a variety of advertising tools across a very competitive marketplace to advertise. And that's really the message that we want to convey to policymakers. It's not a top-down industry, it's a bottom-up industry where nationwide or global platforms are available to you to carry your message or your product to new audiences. They could be next door because of very precise geolocation capability. They could be across the world because you have a very unique product or message. If you're in civil society, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a candidate for office, if you're a religious institution, you have a variety of tools to broadcast your message. And it's all advertising powered, especially when you think about the data that underlies advertising. The biggest, we're lucky that we live in the United States where we have large leading technology companies today. I think what people may not often understand is that these companies are advertising companies. And so the access that they provide to the internet is widespread, low cost, and often free. But we advocate for the ability of small businesses to access these tools.
And I just looked it up in terms of raw numbers because I just want to give people an idea of how staggeringly, make that an adverb, large this is. 200,000 in the tiny state of New Jersey, one of the smallest states physically, of course, in the nation. 200,000 businesses rely on digital advertising right now, which is astounding, just a large amount. What are some of the biggest challenges or threats facing small businesses now when it comes to digital advertising? Is there something that maybe larger companies have the ability to use certain software to protect themselves more than others?
Well, Ken, to your point, everywhere you look, including in New Jersey, most businesses are small businesses. Anywhere from 98 to 99% supplying most of the jobs. And in reality, very restrictive data privacy policy, which is an obscure term but extremely important because of the nature of today's economy. Higher costs will mean that only the largest companies can avail themselves of these tools, and small businesses could be left out in the cold. In particular, some laws or some proposals include a private right of action, which is civil lawsuits over vague terminology in many of these laws that could affect mostly small businesses without the resources to fight back. Restrictions on information that travels over the open web instead of these closed systems could affect small businesses, because it really just comes down to the idea of sales leads and the ability to connect with customers anywhere. But the largest companies and the largest platforms often can withstand the restrictive regulations, where the small businesses would see fewer opportunities. So we like to paint a different picture of policies targeting big tech. We like to say that these policies would actually benefit the largest businesses and leave small businesses without the tools they need to start up or survive.
And how would you say federal discussions or policies in DC are impacting small business owners in this space?
Well, the interesting thing is that there isn't a federal law yet. We'd like one to level the playing field so everybody's playing by the same rules and all consumers are protected, by the way, because we do believe that consumers need a clear understanding of how companies are using their data, that they have the opportunity to assent to the exchange of data. But there's no federal law yet. We do advocate for one because there is a patchwork of state laws that could be raising compliance costs for businesses of all sizes. In the absence of a federal law, we would love consistency and harmony across these state laws. Some are outliers. For instance, in Maryland, not far from where I am, there are more restrictive definitions of acceptable data that include a lot of things that any company would have been using since the advent of marketing and advertising. Very normal practices, very normal sorts of data that could be off limits. And so we want to harmonize state laws if they're too restrictive, but ultimately a federal privacy law would be desirable to make sure that everybody has protections and everybody's playing by the same rules.
And closer to home here, have there been any recent actions or proposals in New Jersey that could affect how businesses use digital tools? Because we know that, pardon me, yesterday we had on the former state assemblyman, John Wisniewski, and he was
Mhm.
talking about some AI bills that are making their way to Trenton right now. They haven't passed yet, but how would that impact businesses and how they use digital tools?
New Jersey does have a data privacy law. As they continue to modify it, we want to make sure that it protects small business. For instance, there could be data thresholds that aren't quite aligned with how businesses do business today. You could have a large amount of customer data, but very little revenue. And so we want to make sure that policymakers understand what data, the importance of data to small businesses, but that small businesses or nonprofits or charities aren't captured by some of these laws. We want to make sure that they're tight enough that businesses aren't exposed to lawsuits, and we just want to make sure that customers and small businesses can continue to benefit from the exchange of information online.
Awesome. Brendan Thomas, Executive Director of Internet for Growth. Thanks for coming on this morning. Great information.
Thank you, Ken.